In the previous videos, you may have heard me mention the attribute each time I wanted to make an element behave in a certain way. HTML attributes are special words used inside the opening tag to control the element's behavior. HTML attributes are a modifier of an HTML element type. An attribute either modifies the default functionality of an element or provides functionality to certain element types unable to function correctly without them. On my screen is the syntax for HTML attributes. So each time we want to add an attribute to a tag, it is important that we add it to the opening tag of the element. So here we'll have the tag, the attribute name, the equal sign, and its value. Then we can place whatever content that we want to assign this attribute to, and then we close the tag. We close the tag for cases where the tags need to be closed. For cases where the tag does not need to be closed, then there will be no need for the closing tag. So I have my Visual Studio Code open. So I'm going to go to my folder where I have HTML attributes. Open the file. If you don't have this, you can create a new file and follow as I lead. So remember what we always do. Set the name of the title of the file to HTML attributes. And then we start coding. The first element I'll be introducing here today is the image element. I'll do a brief introduction here, and in the next video we'll go into details how to use images in HTML. So to impute or embed an image in a HTML file, just type the following code. The img tag helps us to embed images in a web page. So just type img and set enter. Now what we can find here are two attributes, the src attribute and the alt attribute. src is or stands for source. So according to the description given here by our Studio Code, the image URL is the attribute that is mandatory for the image element. So this src attribute tells the browser where to locate the image file. It could be on the internet or in the local host. It is important to know that when defining the location of a file, two methods can be used, namely absolute and relative path descriptions. In Windows, your root folder or your root directory is usually C username/users. It is also important to note that absolute and relative paths, or absolute or full path, points to the same location in the file system. So whether you use absolute or relative paths, they both point to the same location in the system, regardless of the current working directory. Now, to do this, we must include the root directory where the file folder is. So whenever we are doing absolute file path descriptions, we have to specify the root folder where it is. But in the relative file path, we start from a given working directory and avoid the need to provide the full absolute path. Let me define what a working directory is. The working directory is the current location where you are working from. In our case, it is this folder, HTML attributes. So what we'll be doing is we are going to try to reference an image. So the first thing you need to do is we are going to first do the relative file path referencing. Type in the following. When you press the /, Visual Studio Code shows you all the folders in which are subdirectory of a particular folder. So here we have the current folder that we are on, HTML attributes. Just press enter. Now it has opened this folder and is showing us the three files that are inside the HTML folder: elephant.jpg, resources.txt, and our current HTML file. So we just have to press enter to select the first element, and that is all. Now the alt attribute simply refers to the alternate attribute. This alternate attribute specifies the text that should be shown to the user or should be rendered on the web page if the image is not found, if there's a poor internet connection or there's some form of error or the other. It is important to specify this because um, screen readers tend to read the alt attribute for those who cannot see. So screen readers are very important for blind people. So it's important that we type here the text elephant image, and that should be all. Another thing I would want us to know is this: whenever we define an image, we should always define the width and the height of the image so that the browser can know how much space to allocate or to reserve for the image. There are two ways of doing this. You can simply type width and define the size in pixels if you want. Set the height to 800 pixels and you save. This is one way to do it. Another way is to say style. Now we'll be coming to the style attribute later, but then let's just show you how it works. So we can say width and now specify here 1000 pixels, and height you can specify this to be 800 pixels and save the file. Let's save our file and then open in the browser. So here is our web page. We have our image in here. If you want to adjust the size of the image, you simply go to your style attribute and set the width property to, let's say, 100 by 80. By so doing, we are reducing the picture 10 times less than the normal size. So let's go back to our browser. You can see the size of the picture is reduced. Let's just increase it once more to say 500 by 400 so that we keep the aspect ratio the same. Save our file and view on the browser. So you can see that the image is now resized. Remember I said there are two ways, so let us specify the width and height in this way. Sorry. So press save. Let's go to our web page and see what happens. So now the size of the image has been resized to 1000 by 800. Sometimes you would want to reference images that are stored somewhere in the internet. To do this, all you simply need to do is in the source here, you put in the URL to where this information is stored, this image is stored. So I would want you to copy the link in the resources file and paste it in here. Paste it in the source attribute. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. Oh. So here is the link, HTTP and blah blah blah. So save your file and open it in your browser. So let's open this, refresh, and this is the image. What we did here was to reference the image stored in some location in our web page. At the same time, we can also change the width and height by specifying it here. Let's say 500 by 400. Save the file and view. So that we'll have a smaller image here. We'll be discussing images in detail in the next video. The next attribute that I will be discussing here is the style attribute. We use the style attribute to set the style for the image. So style attributes are used to add styles to an element, such as font color, font size, the position, and much more. So here is the syntax. As we said before, we said I'll be copying the syntax here. Let me list it here for you. So here's the syntax. We have the tag name, the style, the property, and the value. I repeat, the tag name, this is the style attribute, the equal sign, a property, and a value. So let me delete this. We will be styling the h1 element like we said before. Remember I said the h1 element has a default size, but then we can change it using the style attribute. So here we have h1. So in the opening tag we set the style. We are going to set font size. can set it to 20 pixels. Let's say 20 is fine. We can also set the font color. No, there's no such thing as font color, just color. Set it to brown. Now there's something I want you to note. After each property and value, we always put the semicolon. It is very important. If you don't do this, only the first property and value will be assigned to the element. Do not forget to put the semicolon if you are putting multiple properties in one style attribute. So here we are going to type, here is a formatted header text. And let's save this and view in our browser. So we have our text here. We've set the size of this text. So if you want to see the actual size of this text without formatting, let's go back. We can remove this property entirely, save the file, then view. You see that this is the default size of the H2 text. So let's go back, paste it back and save. I'll be showing you other things such as background color. So let's introduce the div tag. Here is a div tag. So in the opening tag, we define the style property. Here we can define the background color for the div tag and say background color cornflower blue. We can set the font type for anything inside of the div container. Font family. You can say, let's use Sergio UI, and that is all. We can also define a border for it. So say border. We can define the width of the border to be 5 pixels. Solid brown, or let's just say black. I would want you to put a thematic break here so that things don't get clunky and messed up. So you can actually introduce a comment here. Save your file and go to your browser. So you notice what happened just before the web page was loaded. The browser knew how much space the image would take. Look at what's happening here as I renewed my page. I refreshed my page. Let's do it again and see. The browser knows that the width of the height of the image is set, so it reserves this amount of space for the image. So here we have the div. We set the background color for the div. We have set the border style for the div. So that is how we use the style attribute. The next attribute we will be looking at is the language attribute. So in this language attribute, it helps us define the language of the entire document. So for a document that is written in French, you simply put FR there. Whatever language it is, you just need to specify the short form of the language. So if you want to specify for Nigerian English, so EN-NG. If you want US English, and so on and so forth. So we will be, it's important also to know that country codes can also be added to the language code in the language attribute. That's what we just did here by putting US or NG. So NG is the country code. This also helps the browser know the particular area where the page is being loaded from. The next important item we'll be discussing is the title attribute. Now, one thing we need to do is, okay, let's create a H1 element or H2 element. This is another header. So we can set the title element here. Sorry. Now, the title attribute gives additional information about an element. It is used in the head tag here to define the name of the web page. Notice how we used it here to define the name of the web page. Now, when you use the title attribute on any other part of the body tag or the body element, it functions as a tooltip. I'll show you how that is displayed on the web page. So you just save your file and open your browser, and refresh. So this is how it's rendered. You see here a small box appeared as we hovered above the H2 element. It says this is a header 2 H2 element. So that is a tooltip. So that is how we use the title attribute. There are many more attributes that we'll be discovering in the subsequent lectures, but we just did this to explain what attributes are, their syntax, and how they operate. In the next lecture, we will be looking at images in HTML. See you in the next lecture.